Welcome back to the Plot Geek Academy and another The More You Know. Today, and actually for the next couple of videos, I'm very excited about this. It's extra special because CJ and I decided that we were getting really, really busy and we kept missing the videos because we're really bad about doing things all by ourselves, abandonment complex or something. So we thought, record some of these together because it's more fun. You guys get a little bit more information and we can like focus and stuff. It's an amazing thing. And one of these videos I think is actually about things you can do to help focus yourself when you have a task to get done. So there you go. There's a preliminary glimpse. Sometimes when you set an appointment with a friend, it's much easier to focus. So I am here today with my amazing co-host CJ and Naya, and I'll let you introduce yourself real quick and then we'll move into what we're talking about today.
Okay. I'm CJ and I have been hanging out with Jana for quite some time in the author world. So we're just jazzed to be here and and we're excited to clear up a few things that we get a lot of questions on. We figure if we answer it here once, then folks can come and learn and it's more productive and better all around for everybody. So today, Jana, what are we going to help authors with today? Please tell me.
This is a really great one for our The More You Know. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between show versus tell, because people hear this starting in their very, very earliest creative writing class, whenever that happens to be, that you should always show and never tell. And then you spend the entire rest of your life as an author trying to tell the difference between the two when you're doing one versus the other. And is it really true that telling is never a good thing? So let's start with what is the difference between showing in writing and telling?
Okay. So, for example, and I needed examples because it always felt like such an abstract concept to me. So, when someone was telling me what was happening, this is a really good example of how that frequently occurs when I'm editing manuscripts. I would get an actual summary of an event that had happened previously. So, I've got a chapter that I've read. I think it's great. It's leading somewhere. There's going to be an intense scene. And the next chapter is actually after that intense scene where I receive a sum up, just a quick 5 sentences. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, and then this happened. And when authors do that, I frequently think, oh, come on. I know it would have been challenging to write. It would have been extra work, but now this is a cop out. You just phoned this in here. So that's one example of telling, is that you are essentially giving me a sum up of a scene that should have been in there. And you didn't write it. You just summarized it for me. So I'm not having any kind of show. A show example would be I'm not getting in the moment right when it's happening. I'm not in your head. I'm not feeling things because there's no description of feelings. There's no description of sensory things that are happening, touch, sight, etc. There's no description, like physical description of body language, orientation, where people are within the scene. So I want those things to happen and try to avoid saying things like, she was scared. I mean, occasionally there are places for that, but how can you show me she was scared through body language, through a physical response, through dialogue, even through internal dialogue, different thoughts? There are so many ways to pull a reader in, rather than summarize or just point blank, she was this, she was that. So try to avoid those things. Did I cover it all, Jana, or do you have anything else to add right there?
No, I think it was fantastic. And this is really so there's a much older style of writing. Ernest Hemingway, I'm looking at you, where getting into this detail of telling all of the things and making it a little bit cinematic and all, it was the soup du jour. It was a thing that they did. Hemingway has, now I have to remember, I can't remember which one it is, but famously, he has got a three-page description of a turtle walking across the road. And then it all ties back to the rest of the story. And it is the most boring thing ever. But at the time, it was very highfalutin kind of writing. So some of us get into this habit of telling because we were English majors and we had to read a lot of older material. And we got into our head this rhythm of, and we're going to talk about the turtle crossing the road, blah, 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 blah. In most modern fiction, particularly genre fiction, we have readers that really, really want character driven stories. They want to be in the story with the character, going through the things, feeling all the stuff, all the dramatics, all the everything else. This is why you get TikTok videos of people crying, is because they go on this journey with the characters and they feel it so intensely that it makes them weep. Or at least it makes them create something really dramatic for TikTok views. Whichever. We're not, we're not judging. So it's also understanding that this is what a more modern audience wants, is they want to experience everything they can through the lens of the character. And so, like you said, we don't want to be told how they felt. I felt scared, I felt in love, I felt whatever. We want to experience with it. So when we talk about showing versus telling, when somebody says what whole section is telling, it usually means that that's what you've done. You've said, Jackie felt scared. Jackie did this, blah, 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 blah. And it's generally very simple sentence structure, or it's very complex sentence structure that doesn't do anything. And so we want to make that connection, which leads us to the is it appropriate to tell sometimes? Because I have a friend who is probably listening. Hi, John. Who wrote a macro to go and find every time that he had used the word was in his manuscript so he could consider whether or not he should get rid of it, particularly when it is was plus an ing gerund, because that is one of the telltale signs that you might be telling instead of showing. I was walking. It's a weak verb and it's telling I was walking versus I walked, or I walked across the room, or I stomped across the room, or I threw things and stomped across the room, where we can get more into the what is the emotion and the attitude of the walking. So what he's done there with the macro, it's not a bad idea to find that, but is was and was plus ing really something you should just eliminate without discrimination, destroy it all, nuke it from orbit? Or are there times that it's okay?
I think there are times where it's okay. It's kind of necessary where you sprinkle it in here and there. But anytime that there are moments where you need to be really active in the scene and your character needs to be really active in the scene, try to avoid telling language, or what we also refer to as passive. It's rather than it taking action in the moment. It's like we're doing this instead of done, did, so try to avoid that. But for the most part, it's we don't want it to be overly flowery either. um you've got to consider your pacing. So sometimes pacing requires short sentences, choppier sentences, and sometimes within genres there are specific places where passive voice is necessary because you're emphasizing something. I've seen that done before. So no, there is a place for telling occasionally. Just don't do it all the time. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on deep character point of view. Your characters won't be nearly as strong. Your readers will get bored. They're going to put that book down. Any other thoughts on that, Jana?
The only thing I'll add is dialogue is often a place where telling is used appropriately. Because when we talk to people and we have these stories back and forth, we don't say necessarily, the fear gripped me and it made my legs shake. And I mean, okay, unless you're my daughter, who is phenomenally dramatic, and she might say it that way. But a lot of times when we do have character dialogue going on, they might not get as deep into the show. That might be a place that, especially depending on what the genre is and who that character is, it may
Mm-hmm.
come across with more of a telling attitude. And that can be perfectly appropriate in dialogue, which is why something like the macro that was created, it's a really, really good idea to always search for was or was plus ing, because they are indicators. But I wouldn't say search and destroy it, search and consider, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's going to be appropriate, especially again within dialogue, for a character to say, yeah, we've just had this intense scene. The character may not rehearse the whole intense scene. When now we get to he's explaining it to somebody else, he's going to look at him and go, dude, it was fire. It was I was walking. I was dying. I was and and those sound like they're passive, but in dialogue, not necessarily. So, like many, many other things, it's search and consider. It's look for those things, have a beta reader look at it, and then also consider things where can you show this through the character's eyes, especially like I said, when we get into description. If they are riding up to a castle, you can either pull back the camera and say, the castle was 32 feet high and so wide and had a moat around it, or you can jump into that character head and say, I had never seen anything this huge. It had to be at least as tall as a double-decker apartment building. And the moat, let me tell you how these things stink. Because now we're bringing it in and you're experiencing it through that lens. Now, if you don't have that lens yet, maybe you haven't established a character or something, then you're not going to worry about it in the same way. And again, you don't want to go overboard. But those are those little details we're looking for that bring it from telling me about the castle to showing me how does the character experience the castle, and therefore maybe how do I as the reader. So
Mhm.
there we go. Showing versus telling. Any last words of wisdom?
No, none. I think that your last words of wisdom covered it all.
Right, we are reason. All right, guys, that is showing versus telling on today's The More You Know. Come back and join us next time where we're going to talk about something. Don't know yet, but we'll find out. We'll see you later. Bye bye now.
Bye, guys.